What if one of the most nutrient-dense plants in the world has been hiding in plain sight? Not in a futuristic supplement lab, not in some expensive wellness clinic, but in a tree that has been used for centuries in traditional food and herbal practices across parts of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. That tree is Moringa. You may have seen Moringa powder in green smoothies, wellness blends, teas, and supplements. You may have heard it called the miracle tree or the tree of life. And like a lot of foods with that kind of reputation, Moringa sits in an interesting place. On one side, it has a genuinely impressive nutrition profile. On the other, the marketing often runs far ahead of the science. So today on The Vital Nourish, we're taking a clear, balanced look at Moringa, what it really is, why it became so popular, what it contains, what the research actually suggests, and when you should be careful with it. And stay with me until the end, because I'll also tell you the simplest, most practical way to use Moringa without turning it into another overhyped wellness ritual. If you enjoy grounded, science-aware videos about natural health, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Let's start with the plant itself. Moringa, or Moringa oleifera, is a fast-growing tree native to the Indian subcontinent and now cultivated widely in tropical and subtropical regions. It grows in hot climates, tolerates drought well, and has become important not only as a food crop, but also as a resilience crop in regions where nutrition and water access can be challenging. Cleveland Clinic notes that the leaves and pods are the most commonly eaten parts in food, while other parts of the plant, especially the roots and bark, raise more safety concerns. That distinction matters because one of the biggest problems with botanical trends is that people talk about the plant as if every part behaves the same way. It doesn't. The leaves are what you'll most often see in powder, tea, or capsule form. They're also the part most commonly associated with nutrition-related benefits. By contrast, roots and bark are much more concerning from a safety perspective and are not something people should casually experiment with. Cleveland Clinic explicitly advises sticking to the leaves and pods in food amounts and avoiding the roots, bark, and flowers. So why has Moringa become such a wellness star? The short answer is nutrient density. Moringa leaves, especially when dried into powder, are concentrated sources of several vitamins, minerals, and plant compounds. USDA Food Data Central is the gold standard in the U.S. for nutrient reference, and while nutrient values vary depending on whether Moringa is fresh, dried, or branded, Moringa leaf products are generally known for containing meaningful amounts of calcium, potassium, iron, and other micronutrients. At the same time, because powders are concentrated and not eaten in huge portions, it's important to stay realistic. A powder can be nutrient-dense gram for gram, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're eating it in spinach-sized portions. That's one reason Moringa marketing can get confusing. You'll often hear dramatic comparisons like more calcium than milk or more vitamin A than carrots. Those statements can sometimes reflect dry weight comparisons rather than how people actually consume the food in real life, and that changes the practical impact a lot. Still, even without the hype, Moringa leaves are nutritionally interesting. They contain antioxidants and polyphenols. And research reviewed by Memorial Sloan Kettering notes preclinical evidence for anti-inflammatory, hypoglycemic, cholesterol-lowering, antibacterial, and other biological effects. But that same source also makes it clear that much of this evidence comes from laboratory and animal models, not from large, definitive human trials. And that is the key idea for today's video. Moringa is promising. It is not magic. One of the most talked about areas is inflammation and oxidative stress. The leaves contain plant compounds such as quercetin and chlorogenic acid, and these compounds are part of why Moringa is often discussed as an antioxidant-rich food. In practical terms, antioxidants help protect cells from oxidative damage, which is part of normal aging and also part of many chronic disease processes. This doesn't make Moringa a cure for anything, but it does make it a potentially useful addition to a broader dietary pattern centered on colorful, plant-rich foods. Another area people ask about is blood sugar. This is where the internet tends to get very excited very quickly. Some studies and reviews suggest that moringa may have glucose-lowering potential, and there is growing scientific interest in that possibility. But the best way to frame it is carefully. A 2019 review concluded that the evidence for anti-hyperglycemic effects appears stronger in animal models than in long-term human data, and human trials remain limited. Some human studies have shown little or no significant effect on glycemic control, while others suggest potential benefits in specific settings. So the honest answer is not, yes, moringa lowers blood sugar, and not, no, it doesn't. The honest answer is that the evidence is mixed, still emerging, and not strong enough to replace medical care. The same is true for cholesterol and blood pressure. There is scientific interest in whether moringa may help support cardiovascular health, and recent reviews have looked at its possible anti-hypertensive effects. But again, much of that work is preclinical or preliminary. It's interesting but not conclusive. That means moringa may have a role as part of a healthy dietary pattern, but it should not be sold as a replacement for blood pressure or cholesterol treatment. Now let's talk about one of moringa's real strengths, which is especially relevant to your audience if you follow plant-based or plant-forward eating. Moringa leaf powder contains protein, and unlike many leafy plants, it's often promoted for having a more robust amino acid profile than people expect. That said, this is another place where context matters. A powder can look impressive nutritionally, but how much are you realistically taking? 1 teaspoon in a smoothie is not the same as a full serving of legumes, tofu, eggs, fish, or Greek yogurt. So moringa can complement a nutrient-dense diet, but it should not be treated like a complete nutritional solution on its own. That brings us to one of the most important parts of this conversation: safety. Because whenever something is called a superfood, people assume more must be better. And with botanicals, that can become a problem. Cleveland Clinic emphasizes that food-level use of moringa leaves or pods is generally considered low risk for most people, but that doesn't mean every form is appropriate for everyone. The roots, bark, and flowers are specifically not considered safe to eat. Broader herbal safety guidance from Cleveland Clinic also warns that herbal supplements can interact with medications and are not regulated like prescription drugs. That means if someone is pregnant, breastfeeding, taking blood pressure medication, taking diabetes medication, using blood thinners, or managing chronic disease, moringa is not something to add casually just because it sounds natural. Natural does not automatically mean harmless. Cleveland Clinic's herbal supplement guidance is very clear that herbs can have real interactions with medications and real consequences in certain conditions. There's also the issue of quality. When moringa is sold as a powder or capsule, the source matters. Product quality, contamination risks, and manufacturing standards all become important. This is true for supplements broadly, not just moringa. Cleveland Clinic specifically notes that herbal supplements are not regulated with the same standards as pharmaceutical drugs, which is why brand quality and professional guidance matter. For people worried about liver safety, the current picture is relatively reassuring. LiverTox, an NIH resource focused on liver injury from drugs and supplements, reports that moringa appears to be generally well tolerated and that liver injury from its use appears to be very rare. That doesn't make it impossible, but it does mean there is no strong signal at this time suggesting common liver toxicity from moringa use. So where does this leave us? Here's the balanced view. Moringa is a genuinely interesting plant. It is nutrient-dense. It contains biologically active compounds. It has a long history of traditional use. Early and preclinical research suggests possible antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, metabolic, and cardiovascular benefits. But the human evidence is still developing, and many of the strongest claims online are more confident than the science actually supports. That means moringa makes the most sense when used as a food-first addition, not as a miracle answer. If you want the simplest practical approach, use a small amount of moringa leaf powder in a smoothie, soup, or savory bowl, or drink it as a tea if you like the taste. Start small, because the flavor can be earthy and slightly bitter, and because some people may experience digestive discomfort if they jump in too aggressively. And if you have any medical condition or take regular medication, talk to your doctor or dietitian before using it routinely. In other words, Moringa is probably best understood not as a cure-all, but as one more potentially useful plant in a much bigger picture of health. And that bigger picture still matters most. Sleep, stress, movement. A diet rich in vegetables, legumes, healthy fats, and minimally processed foods. Those things will do more for your long-term health than any one green powder ever will. If you found this helpful, leave a like, subscribe to the Vital Nourish, and let me know in the comments. Have you ever tried Moringa, and if so, how did you use it? And I'll see you in the next video.